Hey everyone, welcome to our very first asana practice together. This series is going to be 21 weeks, of course, and today is our very first asana practice. We're going to touch on some basics, some poses that we're going to use a lot in yoga and to see how that feels, so we can have a very strong foundation and go from there. So let's get ready. Okay, so today we're going to start sitting down. So make sure you sit comfortable but active. And you can, if you want, use a little pillow or a blanket under the hips, but you don't really need it today because we're not going to sit for very long. So make sure you can sit up straight and you can bring the hands on the knees. If you want, you can close your eyes for a second. Just to keep the attention inwards, especially if you have a lot of things going on or a lot of things happening around you. It can be really nice to just take a moment to land here on the mat. And you can just use this moment as well to be proud of yourself for starting this, for showing up here. And try to just relax the legs and the feet a little bit, the hips, so you can feel that you sit strong, even though it's hard to open up through the chest. If it's difficult for you to keep a straight back, it's really okay, don't worry about that. This is not about making a perfect pose, this is really about feeling what it does with your body. And sitting up straight is something that you need to practice. If it's not coming naturally, your muscles need to work for that. So try to root through the spine and then lengthen all the way through the top of the head. Just see how far it goes. See what happens in the body. Don't worry about doing this wrong, because we're not working towards doing it right. Okay? This is just playing with the body. And see if you can divide your balance and your weight evenly, both on the left and the right buttocks, on the feet, and also towards the front and the back. Take your time finding the balance. See if you can find a way to sit down that you feel relaxed in, active but relaxed, without collapsing. So you feel that you do use some of the muscles, you are training the body without pushing yourself too much. And it's a fine balance. Just play with it. If you think you found that balance, then you can place both of your hands with the fingertips on the floor, in line with the hips if you can. And then we're going to open up our left hand all the way to the top. And if you want, if you feel comfortable, just place the right hand firmly on the ground, and we're going to make a side stretch. Try to keep the left arm long, okay? So we're not collapsing towards the right, we're stretching out. If you want, you can bring the right arm even further, or you can bend the right elbow and just see how far you want to stretch. Just make sure that both of your buttocks are on the floor. Okay, so we're not lifting the left, we're just stretching all the way diagonally. Keep it long, keep breathing, so try to breathe just your own rhythm, through the nose, in and out. We're going to work on the breath in the next session. When you breathe in, just get up. And when you breathe out, relax the left arm. We're going to do the same thing through the right. So stretch up, and if you can keep it long. If this is already, sometimes this is way too, or this is enough, and going all the way towards the side is way too much. So try to feel for yourself where you are. Okay, so I'm going to show you a lot of options during our sessions together. I'm going to show you different options in the same pose, so you can find what works for you, and it's different for everybody. So keep the stretch, try to relax the legs a little bit, so don't keep too much tension in the body, just use your strength. Keep breathing. We're having a great start here, guys. Okay, when you breathe in, use your belly muscle, come up, and breathe out, just relax the arm. Really good. You can bring the arms towards the front, and you can choose. If you want, you can keep it straight back, and just come forward a little bit, okay? So that way you keep the sternum lifted, you keep a long back, you just come to the front a little bit, or if you're very bendy, if you're very flexible in the hips, you can come even further, or you can choose to just roll down a little bit. That way it's a more relaxed pose. So you roll down from the hips all the way through the head, the entire spine is relaxed. And I'm going to give you this option many times where you can choose to activate and then you keep it straight, or you relax and then you roll down. When your back is rounded like this, never a good idea to put any pressure on it, because you can never distribute that weight and that pressure evenly between your vertebrae. Okay? So very important, if you round the back in any pose, keep it relaxed. And if you want to activate, make a very straight back, and it's just a practice. We're going to do this a lot over the sessions, okay? So just try to feel what is good for you at this moment. Take your time. And if you want, you can roll over your feet, over your ankles, all the way on all fours. Otherwise, just bring your feet towards the side and then come up to all fours. When you're in all fours, it's important to keep the shoulders over the wrists and to keep the hips in line with the knees, okay? So try to keep the joints always in one line. It's easier to divide the pressure. And we're going to go into cat-cow. Maybe you're familiar with this one, so you can do it in your own pace. Otherwise, you can just join me. When you breathe in, try to relax the belly. So you're going to make a round back without any pressure. Again, we're only pressuring. We have a straight back, or you'll see in the next, when you breathe out, you can round the back actively. But because we're pushing out, it's okay, because there's no extra pressure on the back that has to carry. It's just the movement. So when you breathe in, relax, round the back. You can lift the head as far as you like, be careful of the neck. And when you breathe out, you pull the belly in, you pull the navel up. Your tailbone goes down and the head goes between the arms. And you can make this one as active and as round as you want. So try to feel what it does to the lower back and to the neck. So when you breathe in, hollow, and when you breathe out, you round. In your own pace. Try to keep the breathing soft through the nose. And then when you breathe in, try to come back to neutral. From here, we're going to go to a downward facing dog, which I suppose we're going to use a lot over the sessions because it's a very common pose to do between asanas. You can curl the toes under. If you want, you can walk the hands a little bit further forward. Try to keep them in line with the shoulders and use the pressure. So you use pressure on all 10 fingers, not only on the wrists. Curl the toes under, bring the knees up. So in downward dog, it's important to keep the weight towards the back, so that not all the weight is coming on the hands and the wrists, because the feet, of course, can carry a lot more weight than the hands. Now, it's possible that downward facing dog is just not possible for you, or it's way too hard. Then just bring the knees onto the floor, walk the knees back a little bit, keep the hips above the knees, and you can walk the hands forward and just bring the chest down a little bit. So here we have what I call a puppy pose. And this puppy pose is a little bit less straining for the wrists and for the arms. It's still working the shoulders, it's still working the arms, and it's still an inversion. So the head is lower than the heart. This way, it has the same benefits as downward facing dog. It's just not as tough. So always feel free to go into puppy pose instead of downward facing dog if you feel that downward facing dog is not for you right now. Make it a puppy. And from the downward facing dog or puppy pose, bring the knees then up a little bit so you can walk your feet towards the front of the mat. In between both hands, and roll yourself up. Take your time. First the spine, then the shoulders. Head is the last thing that comes up because we don't want to push the spine while we're rounding it, okay? So once you're up, you can bring the feet a little bit wider. As wide as you like. Try to keep them in one line and try to keep the toes all the way to the front or a little bit outward. Make it comfortable for the knees, that's really important. You can just relax the hands and the arms. And if it feels okay for you, you can just close your eyes for a second. Breathe in and out. If you want a side or yawn, just always feel free to do so. And then you can bring the weight all the way towards the toes. Make sure you don't fall forward. Maybe the heels come off the floor a little bit. And then bring the weight backwards, all the way towards the heels. So we're going to rock ourselves a little bit, from back to front. And maybe you already feel that the weight is more on the inside of your feet than on the outside. It's because we're making a wide stand. Try to keep the hips strong and the belly strong, which means you pull the navel up and inwards a little bit, and you bring the tailbone down, so you don't hollow the lower back. Just keep rocking yourself, and then come back to the middle, and then walk the feet all the way towards each other. So the big toes are touching. Try to keep a little gap in between the heels, okay? Otherwise your ankles might touch, and that's really uncomfortable standing. But the toes touch, there's a little gap between the heels. And again, you can close your eyes. Always make sure you don't lock the knees, which means you bend them a little bit. So you root through the feet when you're standing, and you lengthen all the way through the spine, through the top of your head. You try to feel that connection with the floor, because that is your foundation, that is your strong hold when you're standing. Don't lock the knees, make sure you keep them a little bit bent. If you have a tendency to overstretch them, make sure you pay extra attention to that. And now you can make little circles. From that strong foundation, from that length, you can just bring the weight to the front, to the side, to the back, to the other side. Make sure you don't fall down, so make the circles as small as needed to keep the balance. And keep the attention on your feet, on the soles of your feet, on your toes. Maybe you feel that they're working really hard to keep you in balance. You can keep the arms relaxed if you want. You can bring the hands on the hips, of course. And then come back to the middle. And then try to find your stand. Maybe it's a little bit wider. Hip distance always means the distance of these two bones here. If you go straight down, it's the middle of the feet. Because hip distance is not thigh distance. It's always a little bit closer together. Then all the joints are in one line. So try to find your foundation, your strong stand. And again, if you feel like you're rounding the back a lot, if you're doing like this, try to bring the tailbone down, navel up and backwards. Okay, so you strengthen your hips and your core, and you lengthen the back, because that is way more relaxed for the lower back. From here we're going to go onto our toes. So just pull yourself up, keep the length, keep the strength. And if you want, you can bring the arms up as well. If it's too much for the shoulders, you just open up a little bit like this. If it's way too much, you just keep them on the hands on the hips. So you always have options, and you can play with those options. It's not a There's no end goal that we need to reach or something that you need to learn. It's just practice. It helps to push the big toes a little bit into the floor, because then you strengthen the muscles around the ankles and you're a little more stable. Keep breathing. Okay, we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna do the breath work and the focus on that in a later session. But it's very important to just keep breathing. Through the nose, in and out, your own pace. And then bring the hands together wherever you are. And slowly, along the midline, bring them down in front of your heart. If you want, you can stay on the toes and then bend the knees. So you're going to come down. If that's too much for the knees, just slowly come down into a squat. Take your time. It's about balance, not about speed. From there, you can bring the hands on the floor in front of you. And you can walk the feet backwards, again into that downward facing dog. Or your puppy pose, then you bring the knees on the floor. Bring the weight all the way back. Stretch the arms out so you make long arms and a long back. And if you want, if you feel that the lower back is hurting a little bit in this pose, it helps sometimes to bring the feet wider apart. Keep the knees bend and see if that works for you. Otherwise, just bring the feet a little bit closer together. And from this downward facing dog, slowly bring the knees towards the floor. Relax the feet. And we're going to go into child's pose. Also one of the poses that we're going to use a lot. So you bring the knees to the floor from the downward facing dog. You bring the hips towards the heels. And then you can choose. You can choose to lengthen the arms. Just keep the shoulders relaxed by putting your elbows on the floor. And then you can bring the head all the way to the floor. Or you can bring the arms alongside the body. Depending on the length of your torso, the length of your legs, one or the other is more comfortable. Or you can bring the hands under the head. The most important thing in child's pose is that it's relaxing for you, okay? So you can completely let go of strength, of tension. Just keep breathing. And then from this child's pose, rise up with the head, with the shoulders, into a hero pose. Bring the hands on the legs. If you want to close your eyes again for a second, you can do so. Take a deep breath in, all the way out. And you can bring the hands together in front of the heart. And you can say a little thanks towards yourself for connecting with your body, with your breath, with your mind and your spirit or your soul. And I want to thank you for connecting with me today. I had a really good time in our first session. Namaste. I hope to see you next time. If you have any questions or comments, please just leave them here below the video. Otherwise, I will see you next week. Have a good day. Bye.